Welcome back to FURYCAST. On today's show, I have, hold for audio, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to FURYCAST. On today's show, I have fellow comic book creator. He's also the artist and writer behind the indie comic series Hybrids. He's also been a lead pastor in the Jacksonville, Florida area for decades. Not decades, maybe 10 years. On today's show, I have Mr. Luke Stone. But first, don't forget to comment on this video. Let it play to the end. You can also like, subscribe, and yes, smash the bell for notifications. Now, without further delay, my interview with Luke Stone. Let's get into it. And just tell me like how you grew up and how that led you to comics.
Man, I grew up in Indiana. I was born and raised. I lived in Florida for a little bit, Texas for a little bit. We always migrated back. And
what part of Texas?
Galveston. Of course, it's called Galveston there. But
Galveston. I'm about to say,
Galveston.
I thought you were being serious. I was like, he didn't stay here very long.
No.
Yeah, you're like 30,
Galveston,
40 minutes away from me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Galveston there.
Yeah.
But we have a Galveston, Indiana.
Okay.
So it's there's nothing alike. There's absolutely nothing alike. But yeah, so I still pronounce that. I've got a lot of Hoosier in my mouth.
Okay.
So I still talk like a Hoosier.
Are you originally from Indiana?
Oh yeah. I was born in Kokomo. Lived there up until I moved. Well, like I said, we had moved a few times when I was a kid here and there, but always wound up going back. And then, we got married. I met my wife there. She'd lived there her whole life. And when we moved to Jacksonville, it was the first time she had lived anywhere else. And so it was kind of cool. But we wound up liking it down here. So this is more home than Indiana, I think, to me now. This feels natural.
So what in your childhood, what brought you to comics?
Dude, I loved I started liking comics around 5 years old. I was a big fan of HeMan.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that show.
Yeah, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, the original, the good one.
Not the Kevin Smith one?
No, not that one. Not that one. Let me say this. I was a huge Kevin Smith fan.
So was I.
I mean,
the biggest.
I would put little Easter eggs in my comics to his movies and stuff that he did, because that's how big a fan I was.
Well, my film Ne'er-Do-Wells is basically a tribute to to Clerks. It's what I mean. It's a modern version. It's my modern version of Clerks, not as raunchy, but
Yeah, I mean, he's lost me, man. He lost me, with some of his carrying ons.
Yeah.
Blaming the fans for not liking Masters of the Universe.
He lost me at Yoga Hosers.
Well, yeah, that was pretty bad. It's
like, what?
So anyway, I got into comics because of HeMan. I liked him a lot. And so my dad would get up at like 5 o'clock to go to work. And the first airing of HeMan would be on around that time. And I would wake up like clockwork to go to wake up to watch it. And then I would get my cereal, my chocolate milk, and then I'd fall asleep on the living room floor right in front of the TV until, for a little while, until something else come on that I liked, And so my dad's coworker had seen me doing this, and he's like, "What's your kid doing up so early?" And he said, "Oh, I liked HeMan." He goes, "Well, maybe you might like comic books, And so he brought a couple of comic books to work for my dad, and he brought them to me, and I kept those things. And I'll tell you, I fell in love with them. My favorite was the Hulk. I remember I got the Secret Wars #4, where the cover has Hulk. There's a billion tons of rock, and there's Hulk saving everybody's life, man. It just spoke to me. I loved it. And then as I got older, I pulled that comic book back out, and I traced every panel of that book, trying to draw like that guy, trying to learn how to draw like that guy. Because I started drawing when I was like 3. And I just kept practicing. And then once I got to where I could trace it all, I looked at it and then drew it and tried to draw it from sight. And then I tried to draw it from memory. Once I got tired of that, I started moving on to other stuff. I remember there was one time, my early teens, I had gotten a hold of some bodybuilder magazines with all these muscle men in there, right? Because I wanted to learn how to draw all these like big muscle groups and figure out like how everything really supposed to look, you know? And so I would sit there and I would just draw for hours and hours looking at these muscle men magazines, you know, trying to figure out all these muscle groups. And one day my dad walks in and I got these magazines all over the bedroom floor. I'm drawing. And he comes in and he just looks at him. He looks over at me. He looks back at those things. I'm looking up at him like, what's going on? He's like, son, do we need to have a talk or something? He goes, you know, you can tell me anything. I'm gonna love you no matter what, right? Yeah, I said, I noticed, he goes, I noticed all the magazines. I said, yeah, I'm trying to draw these muscle guys, try to figure out how to draw these superheroes better. He goes, oh, okay, all right. But my mom and dad, they were huge in investing into my desire to do art. And so I had a friend, Gary Dale, and his brother Jeremy was a comic book artist. He drew G.I. Joe, worked for IDW, but in like November of 2014, I think it was, he wound up getting sick and got some con crud, and it got bad. He wound up dying, you know, and he was just a few years older than I was. And it made me start thinking, you know, I've always wanted to do comic books. He was kind of the guy in the friend group that was doing them. So you live vicariously through them. You know, one of us did it.
Yeah.
You know, not all of us have to do it, you know, and he was published. You know, you could point to his work. And so, yeah, but that shook me. And I decided, you know, I was going to start doing comics. I'd always wanted to do comics, you know, and abandoned it for music. And then, you know, it was time in my life to get back to it. And so I just started 2014, 2015, really started digging in, trying to make comics again. So yeah,
Backtracking a little bit to the Hulk and HeMan, what do you think? What was it about those stories that really captivated you?
You see, I believe it or not, I mean, people can't see how tall I am. I'm 6'4", and I've always been a pretty large guy. And since about puberty hit, but prior to that, you know, I was kind of a skinny guy. I didn't really grow much until the 7th grade, you know, right before the 7th grade. But I got picked on a lot, and you know, it's kind of dweeby. And there's something about those stories how they, you know, they just protect and defend. And I was really, you know, they're strong. They had a strength. You know, they couldn't be beaten. You know, I was just drawn to that, you know, that hero.
Yeah.
And it's what I wanted to be. You know, I kind of aspired. That's what I wanted to be. And, you know, I couldn't, you know, summon the power of Grayskull, and I couldn't Hulk out, but I could decide to do what was right and stand up for people if I needed to. And so, yeah, that's what kind of, you know, drew me to those characters.
Now, at this time, because you mentioned a little bit, you were playing music in a church, and then I guess I got you a job at a church, which led you to Jacksonville. Tell me that story of like your ministry journey.
Yeah, so I got saved when I was 12 years old, and we, you know, I just started going to youth group. I remember getting a phone call one morning from a guy that had gone to the church that my mom and dad attended. He gives me a call one Sunday morning, says, "Hey, Luke, this is Brother Ronnie." I said, "Hey, Brother Ronnie, what's going on?" He goes, what do you got going on today?" I said, "No, I don't think I got anything going on today." He goes, "All right, you want to come to church?" I'm like, what? So I've since learned, if anybody calls you on a Sunday morning, ask you if you got nothing to do, you say you have something to do unless you want to go to church with them. So I asked mom and dad. They said, "Yeah, just get out here." They were still asleep. So he come pick me up, and I went to church that day, and I didn't fit in, man. I didn't fit in at all. They were playing music I didn't really connect with. I think I wore a band t-shirt, like AC/DC or something. And, you know.
Did you become a youth pastor and then?
Yeah, well, yeah, I wound up hooking up with a group called Youth for Christ. And so I wound up becoming a student leader. Then when I graduated, I became an intern. That internship led into after my wife and I got married at 20. So I got married pretty young.
Mhm.
And so my wife and I served as youth leaders at a church. And then it was 2009, I think, maybe 2010. I can't remember exactly. I wound up going into ministry vocationally. And that brought me initially to Jacksonville as the music and youth pastor. And that was pretty good. But we were only here for about 7, 8, 9 months before the lead pastor wound up resigning. And I started filling the pulpit, and they were looking for a lead pastor. And I never wanted to be a lead pastor. It was not in the cards. I knew it was a lot of work. I'm not normal. I can't have lighthouses and sailboats in my office. I'm Star Wars in my office, and but they kept saying they had a guy in mind. Turns out I was the guy they had in mind. So after a few attempts of talking me into it, I said, well, take a vote. If anybody votes no, I won't do it. But I said, if everybody votes yes, I'll take the job. And so they did a vote one Sunday after church. I went over to the parsonage and sat in my easy chair, got a mason jar full of sweet tea, and started watching a football game. And then I get a phone call about 15 minutes later. They said it was unanimous. Everybody wants you to be the pastor. And I've been a lead pastor all the way up until 2 weeks ago. And our church didn't fare too well through COVID. I wound up getting sick last year, which put me in the hospital for about 5 months. And that, small church struggling already through COVID. We were mobile at the time because we had to sell our property back in 2019. And we just couldn't make it. When I got back, it was clear. It was what the writing was on the wall, so to speak. And so we had our last service, and we're in the process of dissolution now. So it should be done here in a couple of weeks.
That's rough, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
It is, but it's like it says in John, or what is it, Matthew? It's one of those gospels where Jesus is talking. He says, unless the grain falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone.
Yeah.
But if it dies, it produces much fruit.
Now you've had a rough year.
A little bit, yeah. I got the vid. I got the Delta variant, man. I got it. It's been about a year ago. It was middle of August. I started getting sick. I remember it was like a Friday the 13th when I took the test and realized found out it was COVID. Wound up going to the ER that night. They gave me some medicine and sent me home. Said, okay, go do this other appointment in a couple of days, and they'll give you this antibody treatment, and that should help. Well, by Tuesday, I was just so bad. I went back. I got put in the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 14 days. Wasn't getting any better, and they were like, Mr. Stone, you're probably gonna have to go downstairs to the ICU, get put on the vent. And I said, well, they're telling me that if I get, people are calling me and telling me if I get put on the vent, I'm probably gonna die. They said, yeah, probably. They were very honest. I said, well, what's the chances? He said, well, if you don't go get on the vent, you're definitely going to die. He goes, you're not going to leave this room. You're going to die up here. And I said, well, I don't like the way that sounds. It's not very nice to say. He goes, I got to, tell you the truth. You're going to die. So I said, well, what's my chances if I go downstairs? They said about 5%. We'll give you about 5% on that. So I wound up making the decision and calling my family and basically saying goodbye. And they put me down. They put me down on August 30th. Yeah.
When you say they put you down, they induced a coma, or what do you mean
they induced a coma, and they intubated me. And I was intubated for 5.5 weeks. During that time, I was, I had a lot of problems, kept vomiting. They didn't want me to aspirate, so they had to make a tough choice whether to feed me or not. They chose not to feed me so that I wouldn't vomit and aspirate. And so I wound up losing like 85 pounds. All of my muscles atrophied during that time. Woke up, I didn't have use of my left arm. As a guitarist, that was bad news. So I was in the ICU for 52 days. I left, went to LTAC for a couple of months. Then I went to a rehab facility for another couple of months. And then I went to my final rehab facility. And so I was in the hospital or in facility a total of 150 days. I was away from home and in the hospital. I didn't learn how to walk again until end of December, beginning of January, right after Christmas and New Year's.
But you're doing much better now. You're at least getting,
Yeah,
coming
I'm not
around.
napping as much. Yeah, I mean, I'm 42, so I still nap. I mean, but I'm not napping as much. Yeah, I'm getting around. I've started my own business. I'm doing comic books and graphic design full time now.
Well, let me ask you about that now, because we talked a little bit about your journey with faith. Is there an intersection between your faith and the comics you make?
Yes and no. I just make comic books, fun comic books, but my worldview enters the comic books, and they become a bit allegorical, so there are parallels in the story to things that I've learned in my journey, and things that are biblical, and if you're looking for them, you can find them. They're very cleverly woven into the fabric of the story.
Like Lord
I
of the
try not
Rings
to-
or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tolkien and Lewis are my inspirations for that.
Okay.
So that's how they're very outspoken Christians and have faith, but their stories can be enjoyed by anybody. But yet you can see the parallels in their faith, from their faith into their stories. And that's how I try to write. That's what I try to do with my stuff. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about hybrids then.
Oh yeah. So hybrids, it started about probably 15 years ago. I was really interested in aliens and conspiracies, and I had a pastor friend that I was serving under at one of the churches I served at, that he also enjoyed some of those things, and we would talk about the weird things in the Bible. One of the weird things we talked about a lot was Genesis chapter 6, about the sons of God or angels seeing the daughters of men and having babies, how those were the Nephilim. And I remember when I found out that someone thought that the Nephilim were actually real life inspiration for the Greek gods. And so I brought that to him, and we started drawing all the parallels. And then we started drawing parallels between that and historical things. And I was just fun. And he knew I wanted to make comics. And he said, dude, you should turn that into a comic book. And so, yeah, about 15 years ago, I decided, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn that into a comic book. And so I kind of created this world and all this stuff going on behind it. And so that's where it came from. I just started writing the story about these characters and their interaction with this information, and what's going on and everything. So
And how many issues of hybrids do you have, the comic?
I just got notice today from the printer that by Friday I'll have issue 8. I am drawing issue 9. Issue 10 and 11 have been written and the layouts are done, and I am in the process of writing issue 12. And issue 12 will wrap up this arc, and then we'll start some spin-off stories going off from it. So yeah, so that's where we're at with this one so far.
So you were also a member of the infamous Comics Gate.
Oh yes, the evil, infamous Comics Gate.
Tell me about that. Tell me about your experience.
Truthfully, I kind of was always Comics Gate adjacent and placed into that group because of my faith. Several conservative Christians in the early days of Comics Gate went that direction. I never actually declared until much later. I just kind of worked with some of those people, and I heard all of the negativity. I heard all the stuff that I just didn't, I just found out to not be true, because I knew some of these people. And I'll be honest with you, some of the people, they were just garbage people, but you're going to find them anywhere. There's always going to be the people that's going to hijack a movement or a group for their own benefit, And so, but I really aligned with their values of, the person that has that's got the most talent should be the one on the book, should be the one, producing stuff. Don't hire someone just because they check off a box. And I believe that's the same way about, cis white male Christian. Don't.
Sounds like a horror movie. Cis White Male by Blumhouse.
Hiding in the depths of the internet, waiting to troll you. Yes, exactly. I don't. But yeah, I don't think that, even if that's who you are, that if somebody else is more talented than you, it shouldn't be a boys club. Like hire who's the best, and make the best product. So I kind of aligned with that. Also, I didn't like the political agenda. I remember the Spider-Man issue back in the 90s where they were trying to, smoking bad, and yeah, I agree, smoking's bad, but they really vilified the cigarettes and people smoking them and things like that. And it felt very forced, very heavy-handed. And you can kind of tell when you're being preached at. As a preacher, I know people can tell when they're being preached at. And I know when preaching is taking place. So I just didn't like that. And I didn't like being made to feel bad or belittled because of my Christian values, that they didn't align with, leftist ideology. And so I kind of agreed with that. And I didn't like the idea of, I love inclusion. I mean, if you look at hybrids, it's got strong female leads and it's got people of color. It's got all kinds of folks in there. And but I don't like forced diversity. There's too many good characters out there that already exist. And if you're a comic book fan, about most of them. So it's like let's pull those characters up and put them on the big screen. That's where they belong. They're great characters. And so I kind of aligned with all those things, because a lot of people, they try to pit you one side or the other. You either have to disown them or you're one of them, right? And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. And I'm one of those, I write my own narrative. I don't let someone else write it for me. And so I decided I was going to declare that I was CG friendly, that, I agree with their core tenets. I don't agree with the fighting. I don't agree with, the fact that there are some bigots there, but there's some bigots on the left too. They just don't realize they're bigots. They call themselves woke, and they don't realize that a lot of their ideology is steeped in racism. And it's ironic, really. It's ironic, not in a funny way, but in a sad way. And yeah, so I did that, but I don't typically use the hashtag to sell my book. I've never actually tried to sell my book based on being a CG affiliated creator. That's not how I plan to sell it. I want to sell my book based on the merit of my talent and the work that I put into it, and not just because I'm a part of a group. So I am affiliated with CG. Yeah. I'm not shy about saying it. But really there's really only two names that I take. Christian is kind of my main one. That's the one. And I'm not usually worthy to even be called that most days. And then Luke, hashtag Luke Stone Studios. I am Luke Stone Studios. So those are the hashtags that I use most of the time. So, but yeah, I'm a part of the dreaded CG.
The dreaded.
Now, I actually had somebody ask me once. They go, like right after, they goes, "Man, I just didn't know that you were. I didn't know that you were a racist." And now, well, have I ever been? Well, no. You're just such a nice guy. I didn't take you for one of those. I said I'm not one of those, and that's the thing. The majority of the people that work in the CG realm are not that way. They're diverse in thought and person. They are hardworking. They are creative individuals, and we're not Ethan Van Sciver. He doesn't know most of us, and we don't sell his book, and he doesn't sell ours.
And I won't, if you don't want me to use this, I could cut this out, but are you not a fan or friendly with EVS?
Oh no, I'm a fan of EVS. I love his work. And yeah, feel free to use this. Yeah, I'm not ashamed. I love his work. I think he's a very talented artist. I think his writing is pretty good, but he could be better.
Yeah. Is it
But
just
man,
his brash personality, or?
yeah, I don't, the whole shock jock thing.
Yeah.
And I get the real sense that that's not really who he is in real life. That is the persona. I think that he's a fighter. I think that, that
Yeah.
he's an outspoken guy and he's a fighter willing to fight anybody. I think maybe he also fights recreationally. I think he enjoys it.
Yeah. There are personalities out there that are just
Yeah.
always trying to poke the bear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My wife says that I fight recreationally. I don't think I do. At least that's not my public persona anyway. But no, I'm a fan of his work. I think he's great. I know that he shares faith with me. I don't know, a lot about his faith journey. I would love to talk with him sometime about that. And, not
Yeah.
necessarily, I don't necessarily need him to sell my book, but I'd like to get to know who he is, just like like to get to know who everybody is.
You kind of touched on something I'm trying to do here with the podcast, which is it's get to know people,
Mhm.
especially within inside the CG space.
Yeah.
But get to know the people that are being creative and that, I'm sharing a creative landscape with. Um, Part of that is your process, your creative process.
Yeah.
So can you take me through, because you write and illustrate
I do,
your
yeah.
your own comics, right? Can you take me through your process?
I
How
do.
how does it start with the idea, end up with a book?
I get a lot of crazy ideas, and so I'll just shoot weird ideas out all the time, and then I usually run them by my wife, daughter, and son. And I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? And if either if they're like, hey, that might be interesting, then I'll flesh it out a little bit, and I'll come up with like a basic pitch, an idea, a couple paragraphs about it. And then I work with editors. That's something I didn't do early on, but I do now. I work with editors, primarily Piper. She and I have a great relationship. She knows my writing style. She knows kind of what I want to accomplish. And so, I run things by her. And then I do a couple of things these days. So I'm working on hybrids, which I write and draw. There's a couple of other IPs that I'm going to be writing and drawing, but there's other stuff that I'm like, it's my brainchild, but I'm having a writer work on it, and I'm having other artists. I'm like Stan Lee and or Jim Shooter in this stuff, and so trying to make like a universe out of my little creative studio. And so for stuff that I work on, it starts with an outline. I figure out where I want to end it and where I want to start it, and then I work out kind of the beats. I write beats, and then once that's been gone over with an editor and a couple of proofreaders, people that are just going to kind of give me some ideas. I include Nicholas Tockert, the game developer, because he does like quick play things inside of the universe. So he writes some stuff, and so
So I'll
I
make a
include him.
beat sheet. Do you have like a beat sheet, just a pop, pop, pop
Yeah,
of the
yeah, the
story?
big rocks. Yeah, big rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll write, and basically, I don't. They're not. I kind of write a scene, like I get these scenes in my head, and so my beats are these scenes, and then I create a rhythm out of it, and then I break off where each issue is going to be for the arc. And then I go in and then I take that outline and I flesh out the details between the big scenes. And then make sure I don't have any holes. Don't make sure I don't have anything any contradictions from previous issues. And then I script them out. And then anything that I write and draw, I try not to do my own layouts, because I like to have as many creative people in the process as possible. So I actually, even though I can do layouts, pencils, inks, colors, and letters, I try to eliminate myself from some of those creative aspects. So I actually hire out, and one of my favorite guys to hire out is a guy named Brian Dawson to do my layouts. He just gets my style. He and I just have a similar flow and beat. He was actually way better at it than I was, and still is, I think, still way better at it than I am. But I've gotten better because of seeing some of his choices. And so I hire him primarily. He's the guy that I hire. And then I do my pencils and inks. And then we send off for colors. I've been with the same colors for a while. And then I've been doing letters lately too, because sometimes I want to rewrite the dialogue as I go. And I'm like, no, I think I want to say this.
Are you doing it on
And
Illustrator? I've just started lettering myself, Are you doing it on
I did it
Illustrator
with,
or
I always did it with Photoshop.
Yeah.
I did a little bit with Illustrator, but then I figured out how to do it in Photoshop, and it saved me time,
Mhm.
because and money. So I didn't have to buy Illustrator. But now I do everything in Clip. All the tools are there. It's easy. I can letter a whole book in about 2 days,
Yeah.
with Clip. Yeah, and it looks good. All my tools and shortcuts are there, so it makes it fast.
Cool.
But yes, that's that process.
Mhm. So then you pick up the pen. Are you digital or are you still
Oh yeah, brother, I am digital.
with the
Digital
pen?
styles, man. That's what I do. Yeah, I am. I draw with I actually use a Ueon, but yeah, so that's what I'm working with is just a Ueon 20-inch. Works good. Does the job. I started out on just a regular digital thing,
Mhm.
and then I moved to an iPad, and I drew with Photoshop and iPad, and used a program called AstroPad, where
Okay.
you can
Yeah.
connect it and use it as a pen display. And I did that for a number of books in a couple of years actually. I was on that, and then I just started to upgrade from there to stuff on the computer, and I'm just where I'm at today. And
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that because you've been crowdfunding. You've been doing Indiegogos or
yeah,
now how's that? Now that's to me, that's part of the creative process. You know what I mean? Not only is the necessity to get your work out to people, but really, I mean, you create so much original content just for the Indiegogo. How's that been treating you? How's that going?
oh man, it's a pain in the neck. It's a necessary evil. What's happened is we've turned crowdfunding into pre-orders.
Yeah.
So instead of doing a pre-order or a group buy from your website, you're using the platform like Kickstarter, Indiegogo to do that. And so we're seeing that people are losing faith in those platforms because they see creators that are using it as an angel investment, and some of these things don't happen. There's in CG, there was this very prominent guy named Cecil that made a book called Cash Grab. I did not give Cecil my money because I believed that the intent was in the title.
That's
I was
kind of why
born at
you got to
night.
support it. That's kind of
Yeah,
like,
I was born at night, but not last night. And I was like, I told my friends, I said, Cecil ain't gonna make that book. I said, it's not gonna get out to people. It gets out to people, I'll eat this dollar that's shaped like folded like a frog. That's what I'll do.
so you
Yeah.
didn't support him?
No, I did not support him. And I got a couple of friends who are like, I can't believe I gave Cecil my money. And I don't have it. I'm like, he told you what he was going to do in the title. Okay. You cannot. The book was called Cash Grab, right? The whole concept was to grab the cash and run. Hello. You can't be mad at him for that's his game. That's what he did. But so anyway, people get upset with the whole crowdfunding thing. So it does make crowdfunding a little more complicated, but I think, with guys like Eric July showing that you can do this from your own site, that he already had the book done and a number of books already printed and on their way to him before he even launched. It shows that you can make a business model if you can find the capital to do so. And he was able to have the capital beforehand. And so I'm trying to use crowdfunding as a way to build capital to be able to do these things. And I know that, Randy and Aero Comics is planning on building, and I think that it is poised to be a pretty big hitter. We've got a lot of talent that's coming up there. We've got a lot of great titles coming out. I mean, heck, my studio alone is cranking out 3 or 4 titles for Aero Comics. We've got Juror 13, which is a more adult title. I've got another guy writing that because that's just not it was my concept, my idea, but I was like, this is too dark for me to write. I mean, I'm good at writing dark, but I think I would put my foot on the brake too much. So I needed to find a writer that wouldn't, that he would,
Yeah.
pedal to the metal for me. And I wound up hooking up with Edward Davis who writes Immortal Era. And I had read Immortal Era a long time ago when he first started with that book, and I really liked it. I liked his writing style. And I said, this guy's got, he gets, there's that kind of grittiness to his writing that I enjoyed, which he himself doesn't come across that way at all, but so he's writing that book. So we're kind of partnering on that. And then I've got somebody else drawing that one. That one's coming out this year. We got Rift Writers, Piper's writing, I'm editing. We've got Dillard from Dillard Draws doing the art on that. And so that one's going to be great. We're in sign up for that right now. That's going to be an Arrow Comics book. I've got Eighth Day that I'm working on, which is it's a set in the past, but it's an alternate past. Imagine if Kennedy hadn't gotten shot, right? Kennedy had a plan to not keep NASA technology private, but to allow the public to have access to this. So imagine what life would have been like with NASA technology available to the general public. And the Cold War wasn't with Russia, but was with China. And so that is kind of the premise of that story and kind of how that goes. So yeah, I'm working on that one. What else am I working on? Oh, I've got one that I'm writing right now called Forgotten Country. It's set in the Hybrid universe, but it's a backstory about a group of special ops in Vietnam War that are sent in to eliminate a target, but it turns out that target is a Nephilim, it's a giant, and so they've got to go fight this giant in there, and then it it has a fun twist at the end. But yeah,
that's man, the hardest working man in CG.
Well, I maybe I'm working hard. I almost died last year.
It changes. I've had near death experiences as well, and it changes everything, man.
Yeah, I thought I was taking my last breath. Time is not promised to us, and we know that as believers. During my time under, I had a number of COVID dreams that I remember very vividly, and they were all the same. I was tied down, mouth jacked open, couldn't close my mouth, couldn't talk. And but one dream was different, and I was awake and I was moving and talking, and I thought I died. Let's just put it that way. I thought I died. I saw exactly what the Bible describes in Genesis chapter 21. The gates, the city, and I saw him, and it changed my life, man. Like, wow. I thought I died. I thought I died. This is it. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready to stay. I was okay with the idea. I knew my wife and my kids would be mourning, but I didn't care. That's the whole, there's no tears in heaven. I don't think it's not because you're not sad. It's just because you understand the concept, but you understand that this is actually birth. Like, this isn't life. This is birth here. This is us being born into the kingdom, is our choice here. That life happens. That's where real life happens, is there. This is just temporary. And so, yeah, it changed my life. And he told me 4 words. He said 4 words. And I tell people, look, you can take this as I was drugged out, it was a crazy COVID dream. You could take it as I saw Jesus and I saw heaven. You can take it however you want. But there's 4 words that he said to me that have motivated me now. He said, Luke, just keep walking. And at first those words terrified me, and I thought I was going to die in that moment, like, spiritual death. I thought I was going to, because the idea that here's heaven and here's him, and he's telling me to keep walking, and he's not letting me in, and I'm dead, right? But I realized that, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit can speak to you. I felt the Holy Spirit reminding me that my sheep know my voice and they'll follow no other. And I was like, well, if I recognize his voice, if I know his voice, I'm his, and he's not rejecting me. He wouldn't reject his. So why is he telling me this? And he just repeated himself. He said, Luke, just keep. He slowed down, and then his voice lowered, and he said, walking. And it was like sub bass just rolling through the air, and it hit me. And I realized that, man, this guy has all the power in the universe. Like, he has to speak gently because the power to create and destroy is in his voice. And I listened to those words, just keep walking. And that's what I did. I just kept walking. And I walked down into the valley, and I wound up waking up. And then through this whole process, just keep walking. And so I keep doing that, just keep walking. And I think that's why I'm so busy, because I'm not promised tomorrow, and I don't want to put off, doing something that I wouldn't be okay leaving undone when I'm dead.
Yeah.
There's things I want to have finished, and so I'm gonna work my butt off to get it done.
Any last words, any words of encouragement, or anything you've learned that you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, a bit of it was that, don't put off. Don't put off doing something you really want to do. Make sure you get it done. But the other one is, man, there's so many people out there tearing things down. Deconstruction and comic book stories and movies, deconstruction of our faith. Everybody's tearing things down. Hardly anybody's building things up. So build up more than you tear down, and try to leave the wood pile a little bit higher than you found it. That's, I think if we try to do that, the world will be a little better place. Try to make the world better today for somebody else.
Where can people reach you, and what are you currently promoting?
They can reach me at lukestonestudios.com. I am promoting my business. I'm now doing comics and illustration and graphic design and all kinds of stuff as my primary source of income now. But I am promoting, I've got a crowdfunding group buy where we're going to, once we hit $500, we're going to print the remastered trade paperback for the first 5 issues of the book of the hybrids. And so I'm running that campaign right now on my website. And I'm also doing sign up for Rift Writers. And by the time this airs, it might be in campaign mode. So check out Rift Writers. But those links are all available on my website. So I just encourage people to go by there, lukestonestudios.com.
Man, if you didn't want to read any of his stuff before, you should definitely want to read it now. I want to thank you for your time, man, and God bless.
It's been my pleasure, man. God bless you.
And there you have it, my interview with my new friend, Mr. Luke Stone. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Luke Stone Studios. You can also follow me on Twitter at Derrick Fury, so you can stay up to date with what's going on with my new graphic novel, The Gentleman's Guild, with artist Ebi Canales. And don't forget, you can also watch my movie, Lion Killer. That's right, I made a movie. It's called Lion Killer. It stars Regina Ting-Chen, who's currently on season 4 of Stranger Things. You can watch it at Amazon Prime, Tubi TV, Freevee, the Roku channel, or you can pop on over to the YouTube channel called V Movies. And thanks for watching this episode of FURYCAST. Comment below, like, subscribe, and yes, smash that bell. Till next time, peace.